Hey guys, so today I'm going to show you how to create a histogram in Excel. And the first thing that I'd like you to do is go ahead and turn to page 123 in your Math 123 book and go ahead and pause this video until you're there. Once you're there, I want you to just go ahead and look at step one, which is to go ahead and type in all of your data. So I would follow along just by opening up your computer, typing in this data, have the video paused until you have your data entered. And now that you have your data entered, what we can see here is we just want to take a look at our data, make sure we understand it. We have ages of our Ivy Tech students, we have different groupings for the ages, and then we also have frequencies. So this is our nice little frequency distribution or frequency table. And I want to create a histogram out of this data so that I can see it visually. So I'm going to follow along with step 2 in the book. And one thing that I want to mention real quick is that I'm currently using a Mac. Okay, most of you are probably using Windows computers, so Excel looks a little bit different. The screenshots from your Math 123 book are from Windows, so make sure if you're having trouble finding something that I'm using that you're looking on page 123, 124, 125, and so on to figure out what it looks like on a Windows computer. So all you're going to do first is you're just going to click and drag and you're going to select the frequencies, and that is step 2. And then what you do is you just go to the Insert tab. So on a Windows computer, you would have an Insert tab here, and you would click on that. On a Mac, I have a Charts tab, so I just click on Charts. And then you just want a normal looking kind of bar graph to start with. So you select the one that looks like a bar graph. It's just called a column graph on here, and you just want the very first one that you see in the top left. And you just go ahead and select it, and it should look something like this. I'm going to make it a little bigger here. So this is, right now, it's just a bar graph. I'm going to change it so that it's a histogram. And as you can see, I don't really have any labels on this, so I'm going to fix that as well. So if you take a look, the first thing that you probably noticed is that your horizontal axis has absolutely no labels here. We definitely want to change this because looking at this, if you're just an outsider, you would have no idea what category 1, 2, 3, and so on is. We know that these represents the age of the Ivy Tech students, so we want to fix that. So what you're going to do is you're going to right click on your horizontal axis and you're going to click on Select Data. And now if you're still following along, we're on page 124 of your book. So once you click on Select Data, if you're using a Windows computer, then it's going to look a little bit different than this. Okay, if you're using a Mac, then you can follow along with what I'm doing. If you're using a Windows computer, though, take a look at page 124, and you can see that on the right-hand side, you're going to have something called horizontal axis labels, and you're going to click on Edit. And this is this down here, category or x-axis labels, so that's my version of it. So I'm going to click on Edit here, and now we're both going to do the same thing, which is to click and drag and highlight our age categories that we have. And then once you have those, you can go ahead and click OK, and then click OK again. And what you should have is now a nice chart that has not only frequencies along the y-axis, but also age of Ivy Tech students along the x-axis. So that's the end of step 3. Step 4 is to go ahead and modify it so that it's a histogram. So we talked about in class the fact that bar graphs have bars that do not actually touch, and histograms have bars that do touch. So it looks kind of different if you do this on a Windows computer versus a Mac, but we start the same way, which is just by clicking on any one of the bars, and you just right click, and you do Format Data Series. And this is where it starts to look a little different. So on a Mac, I have an extra window that pops up. On my window, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my gap width all the way to 0%. And you'll notice the gap width just kind of tells you how far or how big of a gap you have between your bars. If you change it to 0, then there's no gap at all. If you're on a Windows computer, if you're looking at page 125, there's also a gap width. You can either enter 0% next to that, or you can use the little slider bar that they have. I don't have a nice little slider bar on mine, so I can't show you that, but all you do is you just click and drag along the slider until you get to 0. You click OK. If I click off of this, I can see that all of my bars are touching just like I want. So one other thing you could do is you could add outlines to your bars. You could do some other stuff like that. Probably at this point, this is good enough, except for adding probably axis labels. Okay, so one major thing that we want to do is, one thing you'll notice here is that I have this series 1 here. This is just a label if I had more than one group. Like maybe if this histogram were broken up into males and females, I would want that labeled, but I don't really need that, so I'm not going to worry about it. So I want to add some titles, okay? Now, those of you who are using a Windows computer, if you turn to page 126 under step 6, once you click on your graph, you're going to have a little plus sign here that allows you to add some titles and some stuff like that. I'm going to use my chart layout up here, which pretty much allows me to do the same thing. So I want to add a horizontal axis title. I also want to add a vertical axis title, and then I also want a chart title. So for my chart title, I'm just going to double click in here and type age distribution of Ivy Tech students. And the same way that you edit your graph title, you can also edit the axis titles. This is being a little cranky at me. So this one I would probably call my age categories. And this right here would be a frequency. So I'm going to type those in there. So this at this point looks pretty good. There are some other things you can do. If you look back at steps 4 and steps 5 on page 125 and 126, they show you how to add outlines to your bars. You can certainly do that. It's not really necessary. They added like black outlines to the outside of their bars. I think that I can do that pretty easily. Yeah, so I'm going to use Format Data Series on a Mac. I can change my fill so that it looks a little bit different. I can change it so that I have the black line around everything. So if you're following along with what they did in steps 4 and 5, you should be able to end up with something that looks pretty similar to this. Feel free, as always, to email me if you have any questions. Hopefully this helped you. Don't forget to go ahead and do the histogram on your homework and submit your Excel document to me on Blackboard. Thanks!